After leaving camp Saturday afternoon, each carrying his 50-pound pack, many canteens of water, and also filled with food, drink, and determination, we hiked as far as Vermilion Canyon proper without rest. The thing foremost in the minds of all was whether or not water would be found, and every hole in the fissure was carefully examined. Although all canteens were filled at the last water hole a mile north of the butte, each drank but a very little, as no one was certain that others would be found, and the route planned for the following day would take the party still farther south. With breakfast over, the party headed south into that part of Craters of the Moon country which had never yet been explored, and each was on the lookout for the hidden valley, which was the objective of the scientific party. Little did anyone dream that the night before had been spent just a few hundred feet from it.
It has been almost 150 years since Idaho pioneer George Goodhart was taken by a band of Shoshone Indians to a secret valley deep into what is now Craters of the Moon National Monument. The telling and retelling of this amazing journey created the myth of the Lost Valley, a lush green oasis hidden in the midst of the forbidding lava of southern Idaho. Over the decades, dozens of explorers, dreaming of an easy life, growing crops and raising cattle in a sheltered Garden of Eden, ventured among the desolate lavas in search of this secret valley. But everyone who hoped to find the valley was eventually repelled by the extreme conditions they encountered. The story of this Garden of Eden began during the 1840s, when white settlers observed members of the Shoshone tribe heading into central Idaho's lava fields in times of war. Shoshone women, children, and elderly men would disappear into the lava and remain there until the hostilities ended. Then they would reappear apparently well-fed and in good health. The conclusion that the homesteaders made of this phenomenon was that there had to be a hidden valley in the lavas that was a source of food and water. In 1861, George Goodhart, a messenger for the American Fur Trading Company near Pocatello and a close friend of the Indians, asked if he could accompany them to their hiding place in the lavas. They let him join them on their journey, but on condition that he remain blindfolded during the trek, and pledged to them he would not try to lead anyone back there. It took their party 2 days to make the trip through the lavas to the valley. Once there, Goodhart was permitted to remove his blindfold and look around. However, his guides would not permit him to wander from the circular valley. Without the benefit of reference landmarks, he was helpless in determining the location of the valley. The only significant thing Goodhart noted was that he found himself in the bottom of a huge circular depression with towering red walls. He mentioned nothing else about the valley, perhaps honoring his commitment to his Indian guides. Around 1884, and after the Shoshone Indians had been removed to a reservation, Goodhart fruitlessly attempted to guide a party led by the Mormon Bishop Eldridge of Cary, Idaho, back into the red-walled valley. But without landmarks, he could not retrace his route, and the hidden valley began to be called the Lost Valley. Over time, the myth of the Lost Valley continued to grow. At the height of the cattle boom in the 1880s, it was the Idaho cowboys' dream to find the Lost Valley and start ranching in that fertile walled valley. The Lost Valley even inspired a large cattle company to offer a $5,000 reward to anyone who could locate permanent water in the lavas. In August of 1913, Isaac and Harvey Allred from Pocatello led a group of men to search for the hidden valley in Idaho's Great Lava Desert. The two men were spurred on by the countless stories they have heard of a wonderful fertile valley and its beautiful stream of living water. The party, outfitted with pack horses, a wagon, and a good supply of water, headed west, searching the edge of the lava fields for the traditional Indian trails. Eventually, they found a well-worn Indian trail leading in a southwesterly direction. As the Allred brothers retold their story to the Idaho Republican, they could hardly contain their excitement. While the party was successful in finding 2 springs and several grassy valleys, they did not locate the Indians' Valley of Legend. Although Idaho explorer Robert Limbert was aware of the rumors of the Lost Valley when he made his historic 1920 trek across the unmapped lavas, he found nothing that resembled the storied valley. While working at his taxidermy shop in Boise, Limbert had a chance encounter with Idaho's famous pioneer, George Goodhart. The 80-year-old Goodhart gave Limbert a first-hand account of his long-ago venture into the hidden valley with the Shoshone. After absorbing Goodhart's stories of his journey, Limbert had a hunch he knew where the Lost Valley was located. Limbert believed it was in an area so rugged even he would not venture there without additional resources. It wasn't until several years later, in 1925, when Limbert went climbing in the Cascade Mountains with an adventurous group of men and women from the Northwest. After they climbed 9,400-foot Mount Stewart, Limbert enlisted an enthusiastic group of 14 men and women to join him on an expedition to find the hidden valley in the spring of 1926. While Limbert based his selection of each member of the party for their strength and stamina, he also chose people with a sense of humor in the face of adversity.
R.W. Limbert will start out at 9 o'clock this morning from 8th and Main Streets with a party of 15 men and women from Oregon and Washington en route for the craters of the moon. The party, under the leadership of Joseph Yolo of Yakima, Washington, is composed of men and women of various vocations, from jewelers to ranchers, and each one belongs to some well-known hiking or climbing clubs. The expedition will be equipped with the latest scientific instruments, and a complete battery of still and motion picture cameras will be taken along. A portable radio set and a crate of carrier pigeons will also be included. Thus, the expedition will be able to keep in touch with the outside world at all times. The Idaho Statesman.
And they had a radio station down in the basement of the Boise High School. And I was just a kid, and my dad was probably over at Craters of the Moon. And we got to talk to him. We got to be on the so-called shortwave radio at that time, which was quite an accomplishment, and my dad was supposed to be listening to us.
When they arrived at Craters of the Moon, the expedition drove their automobiles onto the unpaved cinders and created Camp 1, which was located near today's park entrance. They camped there for several days while making short day trips to explore many of Limbert's earlier findings. In camp, Joseph Yolo and his fellow companions kept a typed account of daily life in the lavas called the Luna Press. While the Luna Press did report on the expedition findings, it was filled with humorous accounts of daily life in the lavas and read aloud around the evening campfire. Almost immediately, Elsie Hanft, a well-respected Cascade Mountain guide, was the first to find her comments included in the first edition.
Elsie Hanft from Spokane, and who was a leading scientist, after examining the cinders, stated that they were similar to the ones near the Spokane gas plant. Some of the party disputed this statement, but Elsie changed the subject, and the matter was dropped.
After several days of exploration, they loaded their equipment onto pack horses with the help of Red Strohmeyer, a former packer for the U.S. Geological Survey.
Craters Party moves camp. After much fussing around by the experienced packer Baby Red Strohmeyer, the scientific party started for the southern end of the Craters of the Moon. Red somehow was not used to packing horses with ladies around camp and got the pack somewhat unbalanced. The result was much repacking, to the displeasure of all of the party, and to himself in particular. He said words which will not bear printing in the Luna columns.
As Limbert led the group to the top of Cinder Butte, they watched Red and the pack train winding down the old wagon road toward Echo Crater, the site of Camp 2. From there, the party made their way down through Trench Mortar Flats, where Ulta and the rest of the expedition explored several of the tree molds.
Special to the Luna Press by radio, Dr. Dutch Oven Felch, J. Coffee Pot Thompson, leading jeweler of Ellensburg, and J. Sputtercone Yolo, editor and cook, took a bath this morning in one of the 7 Devil sinkholes near camp. This is an unusual event, and we are glad that a few members of the scientific party who have ambition enough to climb a 1,000-foot cinder cone, carrying with them wood with which to heat water. The Devil number 3 furnished the water, and another by the name of Bob Yodeling Limbert the tub.
From Camp 2, they led the pack horses for 3 more days and some 25 miles south of the park entrance, at which point the lava had become so rugged that the horses could not go any further. It was decided to set up Camp 3 and leave the horses behind while a smaller group would set off on foot.
We worked the radio this night, but we could not get anything. We thought probably there was too much static in the air. Since we heard about the wild cats and how Elsie carried on, we are sure there was too much. It's too bad we could not get Boise.
Leaving the rest of the party to tend to the horses, Limbert left the next morning, leading a group of 8 men and women south for a distant, unexplored butte that he had noted years earlier. He was hoping that the Lost Valley would be in that vicinity. This was now unknown country for Limbert, who made his name exploring Craters of the Moon's lavas.
Upon first leaving camp, Professor Frank found some lava, which is a very unusual thing to find in this country, and hammered off a piece as big as he could carry. Since he did not have a pack horse along, he had to leave this upon a rock to pick up later, but confidently we do not think that he will be able to find it again.
Eventually, the party reached the base of the butte that Limbert had observed with his binoculars 5 years earlier. The exhausted party set up camp as darkness descended over the lavas. They talked long into the night, sharing their anticipations of what daybreak might bring. Little did anyone dream that the night before had been spent just a few hundred feet from it. In the morning, the party divided, one group going down the comb of the ridge to the west, the other down the center of a gigantic earthquake fissure that appeared to form the valley. It wasn't long before Starcher, Yolo, and Roland Whitmore entered a depression just south of camp, and the first thing they noticed was an area that had been cleared of large stones. It was such a smooth and level place that it would have been a perfect place to camp the night before. More flat clearings were discovered, and suddenly it dawned on the party that perhaps this place might be the hidden valley of legend. As Limbert worked his way along the top of the Cinder Ridge on the west, he heard the calls of those members of the party who were in the canyon below. Hurrying down, he found that Starcher and several others had discovered a second Indian camp. They found the charcoal remains of ancient fires built between walls of rock that had been piled by the Indians to serve as windbreaks. Flakes of obsidian were found nearby. As they examined these sites more closely, one of the party called to the group from a short distance that Starcher had discovered a large cave. A hole in the center of the oval cave floor contained the remains of a dead campfire extinguished perhaps a century before.
After exploring the cave thoroughly, Iolo decided that water must be near, and after looking about a bit, discovered a small opening between some large rocks leading down and in under the floor of the cave. He squeezed through, and after crawling downward for about 10 feet, saw in the dim light which found its way through a crack a small lake, about 3 inches in depth, the floor of which was covered with ice. Canteens were filled again, and the party hurried on to tell their fellow explorers of their wonderful discovery. They had at last found Hidden Valley Indian Camp.
After catching up with the rest of the party and sharing his discoveries, the entire group headed south, following the Great Fissure.
Many other waterholes were discovered, and a couple of large bobcats were scared up. And it is a wonder they were not scared to death the way Elsie screamed. The place from which they dashed when disturbed by perhaps the first human beings they had ever seen was named Bobcat Gulch, and a very nice waterhole was also named in their honor.
After a long day of hard hiking, everyone met back at the Hidden Valley Indian Camp. It was agreed that the party would spend the night where Indians might have held councils and danced a century before. Before dinner, Joseph Iolo went back to the cave to fill the canteens again.
Iolo went down deep into the earth once more, lighting the way with a candle. A minute later, with a shout, "I found an arrowhead!" He came backing out faster than he would have had he come face to face with a grizzly. Arriving on top, he showed his find to his friends, who immediately turned dark green with envy. It proved to be a perfect specimen of an obsidian Indian skinning knife, and worth about 10 million francs, or about 89 cents in United States money.
As the sun set on the red cliff walls, the party of 9 men and women spent the night where the Shoshone people built fires and sought shelter in the forbidding lavas, and once entertained a guest named George Goodhart.
So ends the last issue of the Luna Press, and also ends our glorious stay in the craters of the moon. A bright, full, silvery moon shines down on us from the clear blue starlit heavens. Fleecy clouds float over the dimly outlined mountains in the distance. The lavas glimmer in the moonlight, and a soft breeze blowing through the pines adds to the charm of it all. Everything bids us linger a while, but the call of duty is stronger, and we must leave. We owe our good friend Bob Yodeling Limbert oceans of thanks for it all. It was wonderful, and someday we hope to, in a measure, repay him for all of his kindness. Until then, they and our good friend Bob have the best wishes of each and every member of the Scientific Party of Explorers, 1926 expedition, Craters of the Moon. Luna Press, now signing off.
On May 20th, 2006, a group of 4 explorers rediscovered the Lost Valley on the 80th anniversary of Limbert's expedition. That evening, while sitting around Limbert's original campsite of May 23rd, 1926, we read from Joseph Iolo's account of their expedition. Although we shall not disclose the location of the valley, it is safe to say that, except for the Indians, only a handful of people have ever been there.